Alright, it is time for the Targaryen expansion box review. The spoilers are up, and let's get into it. Are you guys ready? I'm ready. I think the box looks pretty good overall. My comments overall about the box and why I think it looks good and I'm fairly in approval of it is the lack of burn cards. What I really did not want to see was a bunch of stupidly strong burn, set strength to 0 and kill the character, cannot be saved, board removal effects, because I really don't like to see those types of decks, and I didn't want to see them get supercharged. Luckily, there's only a few cards in the expansion box that have any effects relating to that at all, and none of them seem particularly overpowered to me. They don't seem really much or any worse than what's already out there, so that's pretty good news. I'm very happy that they chose to focus on other themes of Targaryen, like attachments and Dothraki. I don't know if they learned from other boxes or what the deal was with that, but I appreciate it. So first we have Archmaester Marwyn. This dude, he's like a big 5 neutral Maester guy. Once per phase, you can marshal or play a face-down card under your agenda as if it were in your hand. And after he enters play, place the top 2 cards of your deck face down under your agenda. Very handy for Conclave decks, obviously. I really like to see a support card for Conclave hitting the game. And notably, you can put him in non-Conclave decks, and his reaction still works. So he's sort of like a Littlefinger, even if you're not playing Conclave, except it's both better and worse than Littlefinger. It's better in the sense that the cards he draws are protected, but it's worse in that if you don't use those cards before he leaves play, then they're stuck under your agenda forever and you never get to use them. So that's interesting. Another thing to note, it says once per phase, not once per round. So you can marshal something in marshaling phase and then play an event or ambush in challenges phase. And additionally, I believe that due to the way Conclave works, you will get a maximum of 9 cards under your agenda with his reaction when he enters play. And then if you somehow use his text to marshal or play all of them, your agenda will then basically be useless because you will have 0 cards left under it. And I don't think there's any other way besides this card to add cards underneath your agenda, which is kind of interesting. Although you can imagine playing him with the Iron Bank will have its due in order to use him more than once. Obviously, that's something that could be done. We have a new plot at the Palace of Sorrows, which is an Omen plot with very good stats, or fairly good at least. I mean, 571 is pretty good. And a very interesting effect. Set each character's strength to 3. Other modifiers do not raise or lower their strength. So in addition to being a plot that hard counters the burn kill effects, you can also use this to enable lots of weird stuff. If you have a deck with a really wide board, obviously there's value in playing this plot because it will give you a lot of advantage against someone that's relying on 1 or 2 characters with higher strength, since everyone's going to get equalized to 3. And something else that somebody pointed out, which is pretty funny, is the House Florent Knight. Once you flip this plot, I believe you can just marshal the House Florent Knight and discard anything that you want from play. And I expect to see some people doing that. It should be pretty amusing. But we'll see what this plot does. We have Barcina Blackhair, 2-cost little Targaryen dude here with military and intrigue. No attachments except weapon. While there's a weapon attachment attached to Barcina Blackhair, she gets +3 strength. Seems like a card for Valyrian Steel and Cohor, maybe? I mean, she has pretty good stats even if you don't use her ability. And then if you put a weapon on her, she's 2 for 5. And Jorah at 2 for 4 is in every Targaryen deck, even though he has a negative ability. So I imagine this card will see play in attachment decks. We've got the Blue Graces, Ally and Grace, getting a new trait there, Grace. They said there was nothing left to explore in the game. They're just now adding Graces in the very last expansion box. Anyways, Loyal Targaryen Chump 2 with only a power icon. Challenges action. Remove Blue Graces from the game to choose a card with printed cost 6 or higher in your discard or dead pile and shuffle it in your deck. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what the idea is with this card. I guess you can use this to put the 6-cost Drogon out of your dead pile back in your deck, if you're that committed to winning with 6-cost Drogon. But it seems pretty questionable overall. If it added it back to your hand, that would be different. But the fact that it just shuffles it into your deck is like, okay, that doesn't really seem that great. Don't know how many 6 or 7 cost cards there are that you're gonna really need to use this for. Yeah. Bravos, this is a weird card. 3 cost neutral location. Marshalling action, kneel Bravos to gain X gold. X is the number of different factions among characters you control. So again, this kind of seems like Conclave support, because Conclave seems like the immediately most obvious agenda where you can get like 3 different faction affiliations on the board somewhat reliably, and you can kneel this for 3 gold every round. And since it's a marshalling action, you get to kneel it right away after marshalling it. You don't have to wait for next turn like with the Arbor. So if you get at least an average of like 2 gold per round out of this, I'd say it's worth playing. Notably, it's also not a limited location. But if you're not getting at least 2 gold out of it, then I don't think it's really going to work. I guess you could also put it in banner decks, though, because if you have enough banner characters to consistently have both factions out, then paying 3 non-limited and then immediately get 2 back, and every turn after that get 2, I mean, that's probably worth it. That compares favorably to Red Wine Straits. Unfortunately, not a great card for House of the Red Door, right? Because you're not going to have any other factions if you're playing House with the Red Door. So maybe there's certain decks that this could go into, I guess. Although, as always, you're going to be sad when they just put Frozen Solid on it. Bribery, which is action with cost X event and it's neutral. Choose and kneel a character with printed cost X or lower. If that character has the ally or mercenary trait, you may take control of it instead. So this is pretty terrible as a kneel, but the ability where you take control of an ally or mercenary maybe has potential. It depends on how common those traits are. If it ends up being the case that like you can reliably expect to see some allies and mercenaries in most opponents' decks, then this is definitely worth a consideration. Because what you can do, especially if you're running like a board attrition or board clear deck, is you could even just steal opponents' little reducer chumps with this. Like literally pay 1 gold to take a Winterfell Steward or whatever it is, the 1 cost reducer with ally trait. Then you play March to the Wall and get rid of it and have to discard another character, that type of garbage. That's definitely a possibility. So that's what it depends on, whether there's like cheap allies and mercenaries floating around or not. We have Brown Ben Plum. I think this guy is finally being reprinted from first edition. He looks familiar. 1 cost and 2 strength, but forced interrupt when the challenge phase ends. If you have no gold in your gold pool, sacrifice him. So he has like a tax where you have to keep a gold around every turn or he gets sacrificed. I'm inclined to say not really worth it for what he does. I mean, if you're taking his forced interrupt into account, he costs basically a minimum of 2 gold, because you're going to have to at least keep 1 gold in your gold pool in order to not immediately sacrifice him. And then at that point, why are you not just playing like more copies of a character that costs 2 and has 2 strength and 2 icons and doesn't have a negative ability? I think if he like cost 0 or had more strength, he would be more worth consideration, but at 1 for 2, I don't think he's really going to be worth it. Unless you're a mad lad and you put him in Cohort and put a Milk of the Poppy on him, but then you wasted your agenda trigger to milk your own character, so that's still bad. We've got Cage of Ravens, which is a Night's Watch attachment. Item Raven, Steward character only. Action, kneel Cage of Ravens, so you kneel the attachment itself, not the attached character. So put a card with printed cost 1 or lower into play from your hand. That's pretty nice. I mean, you can imagine there's a lot of nice 1-cost cards in Night's Watch to put into play with this. Certainly in attachment decks, where you're playing like Dragonglass Daggers and Practice Blades, you can see use for this. Miner's Picks, things like that. And even in regular Night's Watch decks, Craven costs 1. It doesn't have to be a Night's Watch card, it's any card that costs 1. Milk costs 1. Steward at the Wall, Builder at the Wall, Messenger Raven. There's a lot of 1-cost cards. I mean, just comboing this with Messenger Raven every turn is pretty good, right? Seems pretty efficient. And then you can potentially use it to put in Flea Bottom Alleys or Flea Bottom itself. This card could definitely see some use. I mean, Cohort, you can imagine the combos, because you can like Cohort it in, kneel it, and then Cohort it out for another attachment. That'll definitely be something that people do. We have Captain Grolio. 2 cost, 2 strength, only intrigue. And reaction, after an attachment enters play, gain 1 gold, limit once per phase. And it's after an attachment enters play, so I don't think it has to be your attachment. If the opponent plays an attachment, you also gain a gold. So I have to imagine there's going to be at least, I mean, because he's a chump, probably just one. He's a unique chump, but I would say one of these in like every Targaryen deck. Because a 2-cost character that is definitely going to gain you like at least a couple gold and has the potential to gain a lot of gold depending on the matchup and what deck you're playing. Seems pretty good. Champion's Challenge, 4-2-1 plot. War and reaction. After an opponent initiates a challenge against you, kneel a character with the highest strength among characters you control to end the challenge with no winner or loser. Limit once per phase. It seems like a fairly annoying plot, and I'm not sure what type of theme they're trying to push with this. The decks that I imagine it being used in is like Night's Watch defense decks and not much else. I mean, what else would you put this in, really? I guess like small character decks or like attrition decks that don't have a bunch of big characters where they mind kneeling their highest strength for an ability. Then it's viable to put it in, but it's probably, I don't know how important it really is. Maybe it's also sort of a, what do you say? It's like a call depending on what type of decks you expect to go up against, because this is kind of like a worse neutral version of Parlay at Storm's End. If that makes any sense. Because if you really don't want them to like do a big power challenge, well, you flip this plot, and they're not gonna do a big power challenge because you'll just cancel it. So it's like Parlay sort of, where you can name a power challenge and they won't do it. So if you expect to see like Sea of Blood or The Prince That Was Promised, things like that, maybe this plot can be like counterattack to those. Champion's Favor, 0 cost attachment for Tyrell, lady character only. Action, kneel attached character to choose a participating non-lady character and give it plus X strength until the end of the challenge. X is 2 higher than attached character's strength. So the attachment costs 0, it's non-terminal, and it turns the attached character into Cora Marjorie on steroids. So it's absolutely good as long as you can keep enough like board presence to have it matter. Like as long as you have enough characters to go and declare challenges without using the attached character, then it's very, very efficient, because it will be very annoying for your opponent to sit there and have to account for the fact that you can buff any character you want by like 5 strength or something using this. And of course it has the attachment synergies with Valyrian Steel and co-whoring cards like that. So it seems playable. You want to have a nice lady-themed deck, toss this one in there. Although I guess it has to be a non-lady character, so you don't want too many ladies. We have Choosing the Spear, which is a Martell event here, 0 cost and reaction. After a Martell character you control is declared as an attacker in a military challenge, raise the claim value on your revealed plot card by 1 until the end of the challenge. If you lose the challenge, choose and kill a character you control. So it's like Winter is Coming, but you can only do it on military, and if you lose the challenge, you have to kill a dude. But it also costs 0. So for Martell board clear decks, I think it's definitely a possibility to just wait for a moment when you can get 2 military claim out of it. Costs 0. You can just sit there and hold on to it until you're going to be able to use it. I think it's a possibility for those types of decks. We have Clytus, and I don't like this card. He's non-loyal. Why is he non-loyal? I mean, at least he makes Banner of the Watch better, I guess. A 4-cost, 3-strength steward with only intrigue, but his action is move 1 gold from an opponent's gold pool to your own. Limit once per phase. Not limit once per round, once per phase. So you can take 1 in marshalling, and if they save any for challenges, you can take another in challenges. And if they play trade routes, you can take 1 in plot phase, and you can take 1 in draw phase. So this is quite a like strong buff card to the whole choke theme, which I'm not really a big fan of. But if you're playing like Night's Watch, Banner of the Kraken, Night's Watch, Banner of the Wolf, yeah, this guy's probably going to be in there. He costs 1 more than White Tree, but he's also a character, and his action can be used more than once per round. It's like once per phase. So absolutely worth having around. And it's like, I'm tempted to say that this card is just worth using in any Night's Watch or Banner of the Watch deck just on his own. Because as soon as you play him and use his action once, it's basically +2 gold in your favor because they lost one and you gained one. So that takes him down from 4 to like 2 in terms of gold efficiency. And then he's already paying for himself at that point. He's like more cost, he's more like strength and cost in terms of efficiency just from using the action one time. And any times that you use the action past that is a bonus. And you're probably going to get to use it more than once. So definitely a card worth considering. We have the new Daenerys Targaryen, who is Lady, Queen, and Stormborn. Is Targaryen Kingsguard going to be a thing with Daenerys as the queen and Hizdahr as the king? She's 8 cost, very expensive. I believe only the second 8 cost character in the game. And when I first saw this card, when it was leaked, I think they might have put it in an article. I can't remember. I saw this card before, and I misread it. I thought that it was a reaction to marshalling her, so that it could only be used once, and I was like, oh, it doesn't seem that good. But I was wrong. It's not reaction, it's action. Search the top 10 cards of your deck for an attachment or dragon card, reveal it, and add it to your hand. You may put it into play instead if its pre cost is 3 or lower. Shuffle your deck, limit once per round. That is insanely strong. I mean, compare this to the new version of Renly Baratheon that's getting a lot of play in Baratheon. Like, yes, this costs 2 more gold, but it's 2 more strength, and it's just action. You don't have to play the card from your hand. It doesn't have to match your strength. You don't have to kneel your faction card. There's none of those limitations. You can just do it and get a hatchling and put it into play if that's what you want, or you can get like any other card that you would prefer to have. If you want like the 6 cost Drogon or whatever BS, Queen's Guard, you can get that and put it straight into play with this action. Seems pretty crazy. So if you could only do it the one time when you marshal her, like it's a one-shot effect, I was like, oh, it's kind of balanced because she doesn't have any other text, no keywords or anything. But with it just being an action that goes off every round, it is a lot more of a threat. And I think this is going to be a card to answer, sort of like that Renly where she hits the field, and if you're not able to milk her or do something to her, it's going to be tough for you. She's going to do a lot of damage very quickly. We have a new Baratheon card here, a Delena Florent, a House Florent lady. Costs 3, and another only has a power icon, so Baratheon always gets those. But she has an interesting ability. During the challenges phase, non-bastard characters you cannot stand. I was about to say you control, but no, it's during the challenges phase, non-bastard characters, no matter who it is, cannot stand. And depending on what type of decks you expect to see, you might put 3 of these in your deck, because it blocks all the standing shenanigans, no matter what they are, unless the opponent, I mean, I'm trying to think of a relevant bastard character that would be able to ignore this and that would be a huge problem for you. But most of the characters that people, put Queen's Guard on, or it's Randall Tarley, or it's Prince that was promised, whatever it is, not very many of them have the bastard trait, I don't think. So just put her on the board, and they either milk her or their standing garbage gets totally shut down. So that's like, yeah, you might actually want multiple copies of this card. And she also has reaction after she enters play. Search your deck for a bastard character, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. So she's efficient on her own, because you play her, she's a character, and she replaces herself. You search your whole deck for whatever bastard character you want, and you put it into your hand. So you can either get like the Bastard of Night Song, or you can just get like a little bastard in hiding, whatever you need. Very decent card. Like, it's immediately playable and potentially very strong against certain decks. We have the Dothraki Handmaiden, 2 cost, 2 strength, Targaryen character. This is what I'm talking about, like comparing Brown Ben Plum to this character. Why would you not just play this, even if it has blank text? It's just better than Brown Ben Plum, in my opinion. Like, just play a regular 2 cost, 2 strength, 2 icons. So, Companion Dothraki, while you control Daenerys, you may marshal face-down cards attached to Dothraki Handmaiden as if they were in your hand. Marshalling action, reveal an attachment from your hand, attach it to Dothraki Handmaiden face-down as an attachment. That's a weird ability. I'm not really sure what the points of it is. Theoretically, you can protect attachments from intrigue claim by putting them on her, but it's questionable. I guess whenever she dies, they go back to your hand. They don't get discarded or anything. A very strange ability. The main reason to use it that I can see is with cards like Captain Grolio and the Valyrian Steel agenda. Because if you play this with Valyrian Steel, I believe if you attach your attachment face down to Dothraki Handmaiden as an attachment, you can trigger Valyrian Steel as an attachment entering play. Then you marshal the face down attachment out from under Dothraki Handmaiden. It comes into play face up, and you get to trigger your cohort agenda for a second time. And it gives you more, not cohort, Valyrian Steel, it gives you more triggers. So that was a lot of saying the word attachment many times quickly. That's like the main situation to use it in that I can think of. And it has good stats, so it's not like it really hurts if you don't end up using the ability. Dragon Egg, 2-cost attachment with the Dragon trait. Dragon item, attached character gains insight and reaction after the marshalling phase begins. If attached character is Daenerys Targaryen, sacrifice Dragon Egg to search your deck for a hatchling and put it into play. Shuffle your deck. Seems playable in a deck that runs 3 copies of Daenerys and plays like any amount of hatchlings. Since it's a whole deck search, just put it on Daenerys, wait a turn, and get a free card out of it. Why not? Maybe you get an insight. Who knows? And obviously, as always, can go with cohort, because you can cohort it into play onto Daenerys and then get to sacrifice it to get like the hatchling next turn. You could just cohort this in, get an insight, and then sacrifice it to get something else. It can go in decks like that. Next we have the Dragonstone Convert, another House Florent. So Alester Florent getting powered up here. House Florent R'hllor character, 4 cost and 3 strength with intrigue and power, and challenges action, name an event until the end of the phase. Events with that name cannot be played. Limit once per phase. Playable card. I don't think it's great. Don't think it's terrible, but could be decent sometimes. The thing that keeps it from being better is it costs 4, which is a bit expensive, especially like for a character that, I don't know. It's just a little bit expensive in my opinion, because it has a high chance of not doing anything, but Baratheon doesn't have that many great like characters to start with, so there's a chance that you might want to just throw this in because there's not that much else better to use. And there are going to be times when it can block a lot of annoying cards. His Viper Eyes, Martell Wars using the stupid 2-cost event that buffs things, the Prince's Plan or Duran's Game, blocking Dracarys, definitely has its uses. Especially if you play it with like Ghost of High Heart so you can see their hand. That definitely makes it considerably stronger. So if you're playing like 3 Ghosts of High Heart, this card I think gets better because the ability gets a lot more reliable. We have the new version of Drogon, 7 cost and 10 strength. No ambush, unlike the other version, but he's still dragon, no attachment, and each Stormborn character you control gains renown, and reaction after you win a challenge in which he's attacking, kill each character the defending player controls with strength 1 or lower. So in terms of board clearing, I think he compares poorly to the 6-cost version of Drogon. I think the 6-cost version, being able to target kill a very wide range of characters is going to be a lot better than this, which only kills things with strength 1 or lower, which there's a reasonable chance that the opponent's not going to have any characters at strength 1 or lower. Although combining him with the Dragon Pit could potentially be funny, I guess. But I think the 6-cost Drogon is better as a burn card, and the core set version is probably better for giving Daenerys Renown because it costs 3 instead of 7. So I'm not really sure where this guy fits in. Maybe Sea of Blood because he's 7 for 10, but even then, like, the 6-cost Drogon is probably still just better if you're going to play Sea of Blood. I don't know. Definitely not sure what to do with this card. Fight to the Last, which is a Stark event. Interrupts when a character you control would be killed, save it, stand it, and set its strength to 1 until the end of the phase. At the end of the phase, if that character is still in play, kill it, cannot be saved. And it's 0 cost, so interesting card. I'm trying to think of ways to like abuse it or get good use out of it, but just if you expect characters to be dying, I don't know, maybe it's playable. It doesn't seem like anything worth getting super excited about at first glance. Yeah, I don't know. Because it doesn't actually save the character in the long term. They still die at the end of the phase. You just get one more challenge at one strength out of them. And is that really worth it? I mean, not really. It doesn't really seem that good, but who knows? We'll see. Fire Made Flesh, which is a 2-cost Targaryen event. Marshalling action, sacrifice a hatchling character to search your hand and deck for a dragon character with the same title and put it into play, shuffle your deck. So what you do is you can try to set up combos where you sacrifice Dragon Egg to put a hatchling into play, and then you play this event to turn the hatchling into the big version. And that way you can potentially get like this 7-cost Drogon for 4 gold effectively. But the problem at that point is you spent 2 cards, you sacrificed your attachment and played an event, and it's like a certain combo of cards that you have to get, and it's like certain phase you have to do it in. You have to do it in marshalling phase. It seems a little bit too much conditions and too much work for what it does, but we'll see what happens with it. I think it would be a lot scarier if you could do it in challenges phase. So you could use your hatchling in a challenge or kneel it for Dracarys, and then play this to switch it for a big dragon in challenges phase. That would make it a lot better, because then anytime you have 2 gold and a hatchling in challenges phase, people have to be permanently scared that you have this event, and you're going to suddenly change your hatchling into a big boy. But since it's marshalling phase, you can't surprise people that way, which I think makes it considerably worse and puts me towards probably not playing it, but we'll see. Fury of the Khalazar. We have Targaryen finally getting their second plot. I think Targaryen was the only faction left that didn't have a second faction plot. Now they have one. So it's 3-4-2 with 4 reserve. So it's pretty decent stats for a 2-claim plot, although I think those are ultimately the same stats as the Winds of Winter, or the Winds of Winter might even be 5 reserve. But the spicy thing of this plot is reaction after the challenges phase begins, put a Dothraki character into play from your hand. At the end of the phase, if that card is still in play, return it to your hand. So this is definitely going to get played in Dothraki decks. And this is the type of thing that if Dothraki decks become viable, this plot will be one of the things that's helping them get there. Because you could put a Raiding Khalazar into play and get 3 claim. Or, you could just put Khal Drogo into play. Why not? Put a Dothraki Outriders into play. There's no cost limit on this. It can be any Dothraki character, so you can imagine that this could get pretty scary pretty quickly. I don't know how to pronounce this character's name. Galar, whatever. There's some big Grace character. 6 cost, 3 strength, couple icons, and Grace trait. Reaction: after you marshal Galar, search the top 10 cards of your deck for either a Targaryen character with printed cost 6 or higher, or up to 3 Targaryen characters with printed cost 2 or lower. Reveal each searched for card and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. Pretty good card if you use the second part of the ability. I think that makes it decent, because you play a 6 cost and you add 3 cheap dudes to your hand. It searches your entire deck, and you can choose which one you want. Back when Great Hall was still a thing, this would have been a card for a lot of Targ decks. Certainly any that play Great Hall, you would want this. Without Great Hall, I'm more on the fence because it costs 6. If you can afford it, it's good. It's a good card advantage card, but I'm just not sure how affordable it is. But assuming that you don't mind paying the 6 gold, I mean, just adding 3 cards to your hand, and you can choose which 3 they are from your deck and use them for like Plaziv Pride and stuff like that. That could be viable. Horse Lord. So we're getting a little Dothraki guy here. He's a 2 cost 1 strength with military and power. But while he's attacking, it gets +1 strength for each other attacking Dothraki character you control. I guess you put these in a Dothraki deck, and they can potentially get big. They help you push challenges through. Seems fine. I mean, he only costs 2, so decent little character to put in there. We have Hotho Humpback, a new Greyjoy character, 4 cost and 3 strength, intrigue, power. With challenges action, each player draws 1 card, each player checks reserve. So the idea here, I guess, is to make people's reserve really low and then make them check reserve. Not sure about this. Doesn't really seem that good because trying to nuke people's reserve has never been like a viable strategy or a good theme. I don't expect that to change now. And if you're not setting their reserve to 2 or something ridiculous like that, then there's a good chance that this is effectively just going to read each player draws 1 card, which doesn't seem worth it for a character who costs more than he has strength and doesn't have any other abilities. Now here's one of the new burn cards, Incinerate, a 0-cost Targaryen event. Action: choose a participating character and discard 1 or more cards from your hand. Until the end of the challenge, that character gets -2 strength for each card discarded this way. So at first it might look scary, but it doesn't have the kill effect attached. You have to get the terminal kill ability from somewhere else in order to actually remove a character with this. And it really is costly in terms of card advantage to do this. Unless you're using it with Meereen, then you're going to have to discard at least 2 cards to like make it as much as Dracarys and kill something. And at that point you're spending 3 cards. You're spending the event and 2 other cards out of your hand to give something -4. And you still have to find another way to make it die after that. And it's not like Dragon is no slave. It has to be a character participating in a challenge. You cannot just point and click delete things, which would make it stronger, because then you could play it on like Blood of the Dragon and just nuke something. But you can't do that. They have to go into a challenge. I honestly don't know that it's going to be worth using. Even in the decks that are only focused on playing burn cards, I don't know that this makes the cut. Because like I said, the cost of having to discard 2 or more additional cards on top of this being an event, I think is just going to be too high of a price to pay for it. We've got Jogo. New versions of the Blood Riders are in this box. So this guy is 5 and 5 with military and power, Blood Rider Dothraki, and after you win a military challenge in which you control 2 or more attacking Dothraki characters, move 1 power from the losing opponent's faction card to your own. Seems like a pretty solid card for a Dothraki deck. I mean, I would imagine you'd try to find a place to stick at least one of these guys in there, especially because he's higher on cost and strength. So these effects that are putting Dothraki characters into play temporarily for the challenges phase, obviously you want really big cards to get the best value out of those, and this guy's on the higher end. Nice power claim ability there. Helps, sort of compensate for one potential weakness of this Dothraki all-in on military strategy, which would be if you're not killing them by clearing their board, and for whatever reason they don't, they're not caring about all that, you might have to actually find a way to gain power, and this guy would help you do it. Reminds me of Grin, I think, the Nice Watch character that like steals power off their faction card, sort of like that, because that guy only has a military, so you like put him in ranger decks to get power on military challenges. New version of Khal Drogo, still a Dothraki lord with renown, and he now has 6 strength instead of only 5, still a 6-cost card, and interrupts when an army or Dothraki character would be returned to your hand. Discard 1 card from your hand to save it. So you can use this not only with effects like Fury of the Khalasar, but also Aegon Targaryen can put a huge army into play, and then you can use this interrupt to stop it from leaving play, which is pretty spicy. Obviously, this is a card that has the potential to be very powerful in these type of Dothraki decks, where you're trying to jump cards in and out of play. And you can use this with like Blood of My Blood, the Fury of the Khalasar plot, and there's a few other effects out there that this can also combo with, where you can just get huge cards into play basically for free, because you have some effect that puts it into play from your hand, and then you do have to discard 1 additional card, but that's probably going to be very worth it for cards that cost 5 or more like Jogo, because Kotho sees a lot of play and he requires you to discard 2 to enter play for free. So you can definitely imagine this is going to get a lot of use. I'm sure people will be making decks with this guy. Maybe you could even make a Prince deck with him, who knows. We have Khaleesi, which is a new Daenerys attachment. 3 costs. I think this is the biggest one yet. Lady character only, so you could potentially put it on other ladies besides Daenerys. Reaction: after you win a challenge in which the character is participating, kneel the attachment to either stand them or raise your claim by 1. So seems like a attachment Voltron card, and I'm sure that it will see play in like the Daenerys stack all the attachments on her decks, and it'll be good in those decks, like other cards of a similar nature, or some of them at least. Now here's one of the spicier cards from the box, which is Lay Waste. This is a neutral event, costs 1 gold, dominance action, choose a non-limited location or attachment and discard it from play. Then that card's owner may search his or her deck for a location or attachment with a lower printed cost, put it into play, and shuffle. So at first it doesn't sound that good because you're paying 1 to get rid of a card and they immediately get a card back. So you don't really get any card advantage out of it. But the potential to disrupt combos with this and just to have some kind of reliable answer to certain cards in factions that otherwise can't do anything about them, I think really should not be underestimated. And that it will see some use in order to counter certain cards and certain strategies, because you can imagine like discarding the wall with this. They can't put the wall back into play. They get another location or attachment, but it can't be the wall. And in that matchup, it's like, well, as long as it's not the wall, you don't really care what else it is. You can use this to get rid of Milk of the Poppy and Craven, and they have to put a 0-cost card into play, so they're going to get a Rose Road probably. And paying a card to switch out a Milk for a Rose Road or a Craven for a Rose Road is absolutely worth it to have the ability to do that. Just other like general big attachment or locations that you need to get rid of. Queensguard, this actually gives you a way to potentially deal with Queensguard besides confiscation, which is very cumbersome. I think this is definitely worth trying to counter certain strategies that might otherwise give your deck trouble. Now we've got Loan from the Iron Bank. I think I mentioned this in passing in a video because I had seen it in spoilers. The new trade routes, that's what I call it. It's the non-restricted trade routes. So it's not limit once per plot deck. You can have 2 of them in your plot deck. And even if you already have one in your use pile, the second one is still worth 9 gold. So it's still a late summer feast without the drawback. It's a 10-1-1-5, and while it's in your used pile, reduce the gold value on your revealed plot card by 1. So the idea, so you don't want to open with it, right? Because if it's your starting plot, then you're going to have -1 for the next 6 plots. But if you use it as your 3rd or 4th plot, when you expect a reset, times when often you would be using trade routes, then you're only going to have it in your used pile for a shorter amount of time. And because it's later in the game, you've played out more of your hand. And gold, I mean not gold, but the reduction of the gold going forward is less likely to be impactful after you have a really big spending turn with a 10 gold plot. You're going to be shifting more and more towards needing cards instead of needing gold. So the drawback won't matter nearly as much on plot 5 or 6 as it would on plot 2. So I expect this plot to see a lot of play in that capacity. I will certainly be giving it a try as such. It will feel really nice if it makes it more possible to have, like, it's not trade routes exactly, but to have 2 big economy plots that I can rely on later in the game and still have my restricted card available. That will be nice. So we have Lysa Arryn. She's finally joining the game. 6 cost, 3 strength, intrigue, and power icon. House Arryn, House Tully, and Lady. Interrupt: when Lysa Arryn is killed, choose another character, location, or attachment and remove it from the game. So she can target any other card in play and it's removed from the game. So it's not dead, but it's also not in the discard pile. So you can't get it back from the discard pile, whatever abilities might allow that to happen. But it does require her to die. So the question would be, first of all, I guess she could be an anti-reset card, although she doesn't discourage Dohaeris because it's when she's killed. So she's only discouraging Valar Morghulis. So is that really worth it? Not really. I think if you play her, you want to be playing her with the intention to kill her yourself and then threaten to use her ability on the opponent. It definitely has the potential to screw people over. First of all, this is another potential answer to attachment Voltron decks, because if they don't have a dupe, nothing saves from this, and it just takes the character out of the game, and like the 6 attachments hold the power on them. All those attachments go back to hand. They lose any power the character had. it could definitely heavily disrupt that type of strategy. And if you're going up against anyone that plays expensive cards in general, like if you're playing against a Greyjoy, they're not going to want to do a military because you're going to pick her for military and then take their Euron Crow's Eye out of play or whatever, which is probably going to be bad for them. So definitely has potential to be a strong card, but you just have to have a way to actually activate the ability yourself if you want to use it. Which I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like what ability there is that will let you just kill her whenever you want. And those abilities have to be out there. I'm sure I'll search for them at some point. What is the card that can do it? Drown God Fanatic? This works with Drown God Fanatic, I think. Because Drown God Fanatic just kills any of your character. It doesn't have to be a Greyjoy. So if you want to be degenerate, play this in Greyjoy with Drown God Fanatic, I guess. Other than that, I'm not sure off the top of my head what you can do. What would be really funny would be if you play her with the Red Wedding and then I think you can use the Red Wedding to kill your own character. I don't think that's worth it, but that would be really goofy. We have Mathis Rowan, a new Tyrell character, 5-cost Lord, Small Council, so now they're buffing the Small Council theme in the last expansion box. Military and power icons. An action, choose an opponent and a character, location, or attachment you control. That player takes control of that card, then gain 2 gold. This seems bad off the top of my head. I don't think you can use it on Pleasure Barge because Pleasure Barge is immune to card effects. Otherwise, that would be kind of funny. But normally, this would be a bad ability. There's like, why would you ever give your opponent control of your cards? I think what can potentially make it viable is if you use it on attachments that have passive effects. So, like a Tourney Lance, I believe you can give control of a Tourney Lance to an opponent, and giving them control of the card does not actually do anything, because it's just passive text. It's not like they get to move the card off of your character just because they took control of it. Effectively, nothing happens, and you just gain 2 gold. So if that's correct, and I'm interpreting that the way that I think I am, then this is a good card for decks with a lot of passive text attachments, such as Cohor and Valyrian Steel, so more attachment-themed buffs going on here. Definitely has potential there. We have Overwhelming Numbers. This is a new Dothraki sort of event. Play only during a challenge in which you control 2 or more attacking Dothraki characters. Action, put up to 2 Dothraki characters into play from your hand or discard pile, participating as attackers. At the end of the challenge, if any of them are still in play, return them to your hand. Definitely worth trying a couple copies of this, I think, because it can put things into play from your discard. It might not be worth it if it was only from hand, but you can get cards back from your discard this way. You can get Khal Drogo back, you can get whatever Dothraki cards that you want from your discard pile back to your hand by playing this event. And that could absolutely be worth it, so I think it's a consideration for that reason. We have Pentos, which is a 2-cost Targ location. Reaction, after you draw an attachment, kneel Pentos to reveal that attachment and put it into play, then draw a card. So it's a nice location for attachment decks. Slap a couple copies in there in Cohor or Valyrian Steel or those types of decks, and yeah, it goes quite nicely into those. It will be used in them. We've got the Pit Fighter's Blade, which is a 1-cost weapon attachment, and attached character gains renown during military challenges. Nothing else, no strength buff, no abilities, just renown for a military challenge. You could slap one of these in Cohor and Valyrian Steel, probably not worth using otherwise. Maybe Crossing? Yeah, maybe in Crossing, because it's such easy, cheap renown. It could also potentially go in Crossing. We've got the new version of Rakaro, who looks eminently more playable than the old version just because he's 4 for 4 strength instead of 6 for 4. Reaction, after you win a military challenge in which you control 2 or more attacking Dothraki, discard 1 card at random from the losing opponent's hand. So we're seeing the theme. If you win a military challenge with 2 Dothraki and this guy, you get to apply Intrigue Claim. So he obviously goes very nicely into the Dothraki military challenge aggro deck. New version of Rhaegal, 7 cost, 8 strength, military and intrigue icons. Reaction, after you win a challenge where he's attacking, choose and stand another character you control. Then if that character has the Dragon or Stormborn trait, stand Rhaegal. Yeah, sort of right up there with the new version of Drogon. The cost, how expensive he is, makes him a bit unwieldy. It's like, do you really need to use? It's just, and it's also like overkill. 8 strength is a ton, but you probably don't really need the 8 strength. You could play the 3 cost version, who's way more affordable, still lets you stand Daenerys, and does not open you up to Valar Dohaeris. Like this card, in order to get good use out of it, you're going to have multiple large characters on the board, and you're just going to be begging to get hit with Dohaeris at that point. So I don't know if this card is worth it. No keywords, doesn't give anyone keywords. He's just a really big guy with some big icons. I feel like Targaryen has more efficient ways to stand their characters if they really want to. But no burn ability. I'm glad. There's no, oh, after you win a challenge, choose an opponent's character and set strength to 0, it dies. Nothing like that, so I'm very happy. I'd much rather have a card that just goes in the binder and doesn't get used than one which makes burn oppressive and obnoxious. Thank you. So we've got Sir Meryn Trant, new Lannister, and a new Kingsguard. So they're buffing White Book. Oh, yes. 3 cost, 3 strength, military intrigue, Kingsguard Knight, and interrupts when a card is discarded from an opponent's hand. Remove it from the game instead of placing it in their discard pile. I would say that it's pretty rare that that ability is going to make any difference. It might have been a little bit better back when Flea Bottom was extremely common, but it's not that big of a deal in the game as it is now. I think he might go in Kingsguard decks, like 1 copy of him, only because he has the Kingsguard trait. But other than that, unremarkable. I don't know, maybe now that I'm looking, like, is this supposed to counter the Dothraki decks? Because when they're discarding stuff and then they want to get it out of their discard pile, it won't be there because you removed it from the game. Maybe that's why he's in the box. I don't know. Spotted Silva, 2 cost unique little guy for Martell, 2 strength intrigue. House Santagar and Lady. Are they going to get us to use Heir to the Iron Throne and Martell? Get this thing in Edric. You can start sacrificing to get some big Martell lords. Forced reaction. After you lose a challenge in which Spotted Silva is attacking, each player must choose a participating character he or she controls and return it to the owner's hand. Seems like an automatic one-of in every Martell deck, even ones that aren't trying to board clear. It's just a really efficient card, because it only costs 2, so you'll always be able to return Spotted Silva herself to your hand for her ability, which is like, oh, I return a 2-cost character to my hand, it's not a big deal. And the odds that the opponent, like, to win the challenge, they had to commit more strength than you. So the odds are good that whatever they have to send back to their hand is, like, worth more than Spotted Silva's 2 cost. And if they're going to try and dodge the ability by, like, returning a Steward at the Wall to their hand for it, then they also have to set that up. Like, it's an ability that would be very annoying to deal with. Because you might have to, like, the only way to defend against her might be that you have to kneel some character that's 5 cost 4 strength, and then it's going to get bounced. You really don't want that to happen. And what was I going to say? And then the other choice rather, is that they let you win, and you win an intrigue challenge on offense, and they have to discard. So it's a good, like, bad choice card for them. Very Martell card right here. 10 Towers Galley, House Harlaw Warship, 1 cost, non-unique. And while it's standing, reduce the reserve value on each opponent's plot card by 1. So this is a reserve killer card. But action, kneel a location with printed cost 2 or higher to kneel 10 Towers Galley. Any player may initiate this ability. So they can get out of it by kneeling locations that cost 2 or higher. I don't know. I mean, this really depends on how low you can get their reserve. Because if you can't get it below like 3 or 4, in my experience, what I've seen of people trying to do this, it's kind of like whatever. It's sort of a strategy that's more annoying than it is like actually something that's going to kill you. If you can reliably get their reserve down to like 2 or less, though, that's where you might really start being able to troll people and ruin their day with this whole reserve theme. Will 10 Towers Galley alone be enough? I doubt it, but I guess we'll see. The Lost Message. 5-3-1, 7 reserve scheme. Action, each player shuffles their hand into their deck, then each player adds the top X cards of their deck to their hand, where X is the number of cards they shuffled. So each player shuffles their hand in and gets a hand back of the same size. Maybe possible for Reigns of Castamere, because if you have a bad hand, you can try to flip this and shuffle it back out. I mean, it seems it's probably not going to hurt you to have this as one of your Castamere options. As for just having it in the plot deck normally, doesn't seem like anything to really get excited about. Yeah, I don't think it'll really be worth using otherwise. The Prince Who Came Too Late. So this plot only has 1 gold initiative and claim, legacy and noble, so horrible stats, but standing action, search your deck for a character and put it into play, shuffle your deck, limit once per round. So you can get any character you want, but your plot is terrible and they can't come in until the round's basically already over. Maybe you use this with the 8 cost Daenerys, because what you can do with the 8 cost Daenerys, you flip this plot, you get her into play guaranteed, there's nothing they can do to stop it. That's 8 gold, so plus the 1 here, it's a 9 gold plot, and you can use her action in standing phase. So that's like even more value. The only threat then is that if you're putting her into play in standing phase, then the opponent can immediately flip Valar Morghulis. But since you're Targaryen, you do gifts for the widow to put a bodyguard on her. So maybe, I give that a big maybe on that being like something that people do with this plot. Otherwise, doesn't really seem worth it, generally speaking. I mean, the lag of an entire turn to save like 2 gold seems pretty questionable. I mean, there's just not that many characters that really have such game-winning potential that it's that important to play this plot for them. It's probably better to just try and draw them normally with one of the 3 copies and marshal them. And it's good that it's standing action, though, because if it was dominance action, oh boy, we'd be getting hit with some Varys. But no, standing action, so we dodged that. The Lannister Red Keep. So this is a spicy card. 4 gold, big location. It's non-loyal, so you can put it in Banner Lion decks. And it has +1 income, so it's a Rose Road, but it also has interrupts when the effects of an opponent's triggered character, location, or attachment ability would initiate. Kneel the Red Keep to cancel those effects. So it's treachery, and it's repeatable, and it's on a Rose Road. Seems pretty good. This card's probably going to be in like every Lannister deck and Banner Lion deck. The only thing that might stop it is if everybody is running Lay Waste. Like, if Lay Waste is a card that you're guaranteed to run into, then you might not play this. If you don't have like good cards to replace it with. Like, if you just replace it with some 3-cost location that's also really strong, then it's probably fine. Like, if you're playing a Shadows deck and they play Lay Waste, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to go get Battles of Casterly Rock, that probably won't bother you. But otherwise, you might not want to use it. But Lay Waste aside, yeah, this seems obviously strong and worth considering. The Shave Pate, 5 cost, 2 strength, intrigue, and power, Targaryen dude. So we have a Janos Slint stat line. Challenges action, pay X gold to put a character with printed cost X or lower into play from your discard pile, limit once per phase. So this guy is a card advantage machine. He's flea bottom, but it costs, like, instead of costing 1, it costs the cost of the character, but it's permanent. So what you do, I mean, pay 2, get something, a 2-cost guy out of your discard, and they just stay on the board. And you can do it every round. So absolutely worth using, in my opinion. It seems like a generally useful card, and just getting your chumps back out of that discard pile, just do it as an action, keep doing it every round, they stay there permanently, seems pretty good. Definitely goes well if you're playing Targaryen decks with a heavy like discard theme. You're playing Plaza of Pride, Queen's Guard. Obviously it goes well with those cards. Like, those make it even better. But I think you wouldn't really be going too wrong by just having a random copy in sort of any deck. Because, you know, cards can just end up in your discard pile and you just get them back this way. It could definitely be good. We have the Titan's Bastard. 3 cost, 3 strength, military intrigue, bastard, commander, and mercenary. And he has action, kneel the Titan's Bastard to return a mercenary character from your discard pile to your hand. So potentially good, depending on how many and which mercenaries you're playing. I haven't given the mercenary trait that close of a look. but could potentially be worth it, no doubt, if you're somehow playing like a heavy mercenary deck. You know, he can just sit there, and if you need him in a challenge, great. If you don't, use his action, and he has pretty good stats. That could be a use for him. So now we have the real Kingsguard buff card, which is the White Swords. It has the Kingsguard trait on the plot. 4616, when revealed, you may put a Kingsguard character into play from your hand or discard pile. So hand or discard, any Kingsguard, doesn't matter which one. 7 cost Barristan Selmy, right in there. 6 cost Knight of Flowers, straight into play. So if anything makes the White Book a playable agenda, this will be the card that does it. Obviously, 2 of these in probably every White Book deck. And the fact that it can bring them from your discard as well is just kind of crazy. I mean, talk about a strong plot right here. You know, you could even consider using this in non-Kingsguard decks if you have a character that has the Kingsguard trait that's like that worth getting back into play. Yeah. Tormund Giantsbane, he finally has a card. It's about time. He has the Storyteller trait. I don't know who else even has that trait. Maybe Old Nan? I have no idea. So, but he is a wildling, obviously. 5 cost, 4 strength, military power with Intimidate. So good stats. Reaction, after you win a challenge in which he's participating, place a tail token on him. And action, discard a tail token from Tormund Giantsbane to give a wildling character +2 strength and renown until the end of the phase. And don't see any reason that he can't just give it to himself. So he can use his own tokens to give himself a strength buff and renown. So he's a very decent, very serviceable character all on his own, and then he gets better if you're also using wildlings. So like Brotherhood decks, or any wildling deck, you can put him in. And he seems pretty decent, pretty playable. Viserion, the new Viserion, 7 cost Viserion, 8 strength, military, and power. Each Stormborn character gains stealth, each one you control, obviously. And while he's attacking, each participating non-dragon, non-Stormborn character gets -2 strength. Seems bad. It's overkill. He's got 8 strength. The odds are that you don't need his abilities to help you win when he's attacking. And he's very cumbersome, being 7 cost. I don't think he should really see much use, unfortunately. I would much rather use the one that only costs 2 and still gives stealth to Daenerys. And you know, you can kneel it for Dracarys, and you're only kneeling a 2 gold card instead of a 7 gold card. Got Water Dancer's Sword, a 1 cost weapon attachment, and it's neutral. Character with printed printed strength or 3. Oh goodness, I've been talking for too long. Character with printed strength, 3 or lower only, ambush 1. Attached character gets +2 strength, and forced interrupt when the challenge phase ends, return Water Dancer's Sword to your hand. Decent 1 or 2 ofs for any deck that mostly has small characters. And even decks, like if you have 2 or 3 big characters, but then everything else in the deck is mostly 3 or lower. A couple of these could definitely be decent to have around, because it's like Widow's Wail, but it's non-unique, and it's guaranteed to go back to your hand. So it can be a very annoying card for the opponent. You just can potentially always have that +2 strength buff sitting there that they have to worry about every single turn. And obviously it gets even better in the attachment decks. Definitely a viable card, and one that I'll probably be playing. And we have Womb of the World. This could be the card that really makes the Dothraki decks. I think out of all the cards in the pack, I think even more than Khal Drogo, this will be the one that makes those decks. Because Khal Drogo has a nice ability, but you have to have powerful put into play effects for Khal Drogo to be effective. And this is like the most powerful put into play card from the pack for Dothraki. It's 4 cost, as it should be, given what it does. And action, kneel Womb of the World. To reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, you may choose a Dothraki character revealed this way and put it into play, shuffle. At the end of the phase, if it's still in play, return to hand. So it puts something straight into play for free out of your deck, and then it goes back to your hand. It doesn't get discarded. You still have it in your hand, and you can play it next turn or whatever. So it's straight up card advantage and put into play from deck, with the only limitation being Dothraki. It can put in Khal Drogo, it can put in Jogo, Kotho, whatever you want. Raiding Khalazar. Seems like a huge threat, frankly. to have someone with this thing sitting here and they're just using it every turn. It seems quite powerful. Yeah, so I definitely expect to see this being played in those Dothraki decks. You gotta get that lay waste out to deal with this location. And the last card of the box is Willa Manderly. 2 cost, 2 strength Stark Lady with intrigue and power and green hair. So they have anime hair in Westeros. That's interesting. Very vibrantly green hair there. Reaction: after a character you control is sacrificed or killed, choose another card in your discard pile and place it on the bottom of your deck. Limit once per phase. Not really sure what the point of this card is. Like, what are you really doing with this? It's like Isle of Ravens that works after something that you control is sacrificed or killed, but it goes on the bottom, so you have to shuffle after that or have a deck search available, maybe? Just a weird ability. But if you care about the lady trait, I mean, she's a 2 cost for strength lady with 2 icons, so maybe you put her in there if you want to do like a Tyrell Stark ladies deck. She gets 1 copy, gets an honorable mention. So yeah. Whew, oh man, we did it. We got there. I reviewed the entire box, discussed every single card. Again, I like the look of it. There's not hardly any burn. There's a lot of cards that are either interesting or that are just clearly playable and worth trying out. And I'm a little concerned about maybe like Daenerys or Womb of the World being broken or stupid, but at least those are proactive cards. They're not board deletion or combo cards necessarily. They're still like regular Game of Thrones play cards and do challenges cards. They're just really, really strong on their card advantage and tempo advantage of putting stuff into play for free as an action every turn. So it's still like more balanced, and I'd rather see that than some ridiculous Daenerys that's like kneel a dragon character to do the Dracarys effect anytime you want, and like that's her character ability or something insane like that. Overall, I'm in approval. I look forward to playing with these, and my voice is definitely needing a rest now, so that is the video.